in my house. So,
We believe you, man.
and she's known to be a runaway.
At 12:59 a.m. on January 5th, 2022, Zion Foster sent 2 messages, one to her mother, one to her boyfriend. Both said the same thing, "On my way." Then her phone went dark. She was 17 years old. She was a few miles from home. She never arrived. 5 months later, in a Detroit evidence room, investigators sat reading what was left on a cell phone. Not Zion's phone. Hers was gone. This one belonged to the cousin she trusted most, the one she'd left with that night. And in the days after she vanished, he had typed a question into a search bar: whether a person can be charged with murder when no body is ever found. He had searched other things too: how garbage trucks compact their loads, how police track a missing person, whether police can take a phone without a warrant. She had called him her favorite cousin. She had told her mother exactly where she was going. She went to his house. She did not come back. This is the case of Zion Foster. Zion Foster was the oldest of 6, a senior at East Detroit High School in Eastpointe, just north of the city. She worked part-time at the Detroit Wing Company, taking orders, running food on the nights she wasn't in class. She was bright. She kept her grades up. She was making plans for after graduation and for a place of her own. On January 4th, 2022, she finished a shift around 10. Her mother's boyfriend picked her up and drove her home. At home, she asked her mother a question. Could she go back out? And she did what a careful kid is taught to do. She named the person she'd be with: her cousin, Jalen Brazier, the favorite from her father's side of the family. Her mother, Sarah Milton, knew him. She'd greeted him in the driveway before, when he came to pick Zion up. They'd left together like this maybe twice a month for the past year. So she said yes. Zion didn't pack a bag. She took a small purse and her phone. She left her coat on the hook by the door. It was January in Michigan, and the coat stayed home. She wasn't planning to be gone long. The cousin she was meeting was 23, a father of young children. His girlfriend was pregnant, and he was not, in the strict sense, her cousin at all. The two were related only through marriage. No blood between them. Zion called him family anyway. On that side, she said, he was the one she trusted most. At 10:45, a car pulled up outside. Zion walked out to it. Her mother watched her go. It was the last time she saw her daughter. At 12:59 a.m., the 2 messages went out. On my way, then nothing. Her boyfriend, Vertez Gonzalez, waited. About 20 minutes later, he texted again, annoyed this time, telling her she'd let her phone die. He called, it went straight to voicemail. He called again, the same. The 2 of them had been together less than a year. He was the kind of boyfriend who watched the location she shared with him, and that night, he'd been watching it, uneasy about her being out with her cousin. Now the location was frozen, and the line was dead. By morning, Zion still wasn't home. Her bed hadn't been touched. Milton started making calls. Then she went to the police. The answer wasn't what she'd hoped for. Zion had run away before. Twice in the past year, frustrated with house rules, she'd left. Once to her grandmother's. Both times she'd come back on her own. So the report was logged as a runaway, a teenager who'd turn up. Milton was told in plain words, that's how they were treating it. She didn't wait for them. Family and friends printed flyers and put them up across Detroit. They held a rally. They went out at night and searched on foot. Alleys, abandoned houses, dumpsters. The story reached the local news, and Milton stood in front of cameras and asked the city for help finding her daughter. But none of it fit the old pattern. When Zion ran before, she stayed in contact. She told someone where she was. This time there was no call, no location, no word. Total silence from a girl who'd never gone silent. And there was one person Milton couldn't get out of her mind. The cousin Zion had left with. So she called him. Jalen Brazier told her he hadn't seen Zion in 3 years. 3 years. Milton had hugged him in her own driveway just weeks earlier when he came to pick Zion up. The lie didn't only fail, it pointed somewhere. Brazier had an explanation ready. Zion, he said, must have been using his name as cover, slipping off to see someone else who happened to live near him. He had a theory about her phone, too. Zion shared her location with Gonzalez. That data had placed her close to Brazier Street late on the 4th. Near his house, he stressed, not inside it. He went further. He told the family the way Zion had been using him made him uncomfortable. He pointed back at her runaway history. He even helped them search, joining the effort to find a girl he'd reported never seeing. But Milton had already seen something that didn't match. Brazier had offered to show her his own home security footage to prove Zion was never there. When she looked, there were gaps, stretches simply missing from the night Zion disappeared. She filled those gaps another way. A neighbor had a Ring camera. The neighbor's footage showed a car arriving that night. 2 people getting out, walking inside. One of them was Brazier, the other was Zion. It could not have been anyone else. Earlier that evening, Brazier had dropped his girlfriend at her overnight shift. The second person walking into his house was not her. The camera caught Zion going in. It never caught her coming out. Then the phone spoke. Zion's cell had last connected to the network in Detroit, right by Brazier's house. That signal is what finally sent Detroit police to his door. Officers came, he let them in to look around, and they found no sign she'd been there. He repeated his story, steady and unbothered. He hadn't seen her. He had no idea where she was. What happened inside that house that night? No camera recorded. On January 19th, the Detroit police chief stood in front of cameras and said they needed to speak with Jalen Brazier. By the end of that day, Brazier turned himself in. He sat down with detectives, and the story he'd held for 2 weeks came apart in his own mouth. Yes, he said, he'd picked Zion up. Yes, she'd come back to his house. They'd put his kids to bed and talk downstairs. Her job, her boyfriend, prom, her plans to get her own place. They smoked marijuana together. Then, he said, she got tired and leaned back on the couch. He stepped into another room to fix a drink. When he came back, 15 or 20 minutes later, something was wrong. He said he checked for a pulse and found none. He did not call 911. Instead, by his own account, he put her body in the trunk of his car, drove to Highland Park, and left her inside a dumpster. The detectives pressed him. How did he know she was actually dead? He said he couldn't find a heartbeat, couldn't feel one at all. So, dead. Definitely.
I freaked out. So, what I did, I took her. Well, after that, I waited a little bit, waited like 10 more minutes. And it was still, it's like, it sounded like it was creating more pain or, I don't know what was going on with her body, but her heartbeat was getting very, very faint. And her breathing was like non-existent. And I took her to Highland Park and put her inside of a trash can, and then I left.
He took them to the dumpster. By the time he led them there, it had already been emptied, and the phone records told their own version of the night. His device had been at those dumpsters. Around the same hour, Zion's signal went dark, just past 1 in the morning. One of the detectives laid out the danger to him directly. If they found her, he said, and found trauma, strangulation, anything like it, Brazier was finished. Brazier insisted nothing else had happened. The next day, the story shifted again. Now there had been LSD too. A bad reaction to it, he suggested. That must have stopped her heart. Months later, he'd reverse even that. No LSD, he'd say, only marijuana. On a recorded jail call, he admitted he'd blamed the drugs in the first place because his lawyer wanted the pressure turned down. He was arrested, but not for killing her. He was charged with lying to police. He was transferred into custody days later and arraigned that month. Every version of his account had the same hole. He'd told police he hadn't deleted anything from his phone, but wherever Zion was now, she'd been carried there by a garbage truck. The only way to prove what he'd done was to find her. So they went looking. The dumpster's contents had a destination. Trucks logged their routes. Investigators traced that Highland Park load to a single site, Pine Tree Acres landfill in Lenox Township in Macomb County. Somewhere under that hill was a 17-year-old girl. They decided to dig her out. The search began at the end of May 2022. Crews first stripped away about 20 feet of trash to reach the layer from January. Then they went in by hand. Roughly 50 people a day, hazmat suits, respirators, gloves, in summer heat that climbed past 90 degrees with the smell of the place hanging over them. They worked a marked grid that started at 100 feet by 100 and only grew. They went deeper, 30 feet, 40, then close to 50. A photograph of Zion was set up at the site so the searchers could see the face they were digging for. One of the officers on the detail had a daughter close to Zion's age. At one point, they pulled a piece of mail from the pile, postmarked from Detroit and dated to the right window, proof they were standing in the right place. The dig ran through the summer and into October. More than 70,000 tons of garbage moved and sifted. Hundreds of thousands of dollars spent, much of it donated by businesses across the city. And after all of it, nothing. Not a bone, not a trace. Milton had pleaded for that search for months before it began. She has said what it cost her to know her child would have to be recovered from trash. Now the trash had handed back nothing. That absence carried legal weight. No body meant no autopsy. No autopsy meant no cause of death. And the murder warrant the police had already submitted had been sent back to them, returned for more investigation because what they had was not yet enough. While the dig ground on, Brazier's case moved on its own track. He'd only ever been charged with one thing: lying to police. In court that spring, he gave his account again. He had turned himself in, he said. Yes, he had lied, but he hadn't been in his right mind. He described it the same way every time. One minute she was fine, she leaned back, and the next thing he knew, she was dead. He pleaded out and took a term of 23 months to 4 years. Then he qualified for a 90-day boot camp program that triggered an automatic release. In January 2023, he walked out. 10 months, that was the whole price. And as the landfill search had been winding down, he'd sent his girlfriend a link to an article, one asking whether a person could be charged with murder if a body is never found. He told her he had planned out every step. He told her there was nothing to worry about. Zion was still in the ground. The man who put her there was free, and he believed he'd won. The case didn't live in the landfill. It lived on a phone. 2 days after Zion disappeared, Brazier had performed a factory reset, wiping his device down to nothing. But a wipe is not the same as gone. Investigators pulled back what they could, and what came back was a record of the days after she died. In that window, someone on his phone had searched a string of questions. Whether a person can be charged with murder if the body is never found. How garbage trucks compact what they carry. How police track a missing person. How they track a phone. Whether they can take one without a warrant. There was a search asking whether a person can die from Motrin. Another asking what could kill someone. These were not the searches of a man who didn't know what had happened. They were the searches of a man working out what came next. Then there were the messages. Across her accounts and his, investigators found more than 4,000 texts between the two of them. Many were sexual. Some reached back to when Zion was 16. On his phone were links to pornography about cousins and videos to go with them. Prosecutors would argue what all of that meant, that Brazier had been grooming her, steering the relationship she called family towards something else. Their theory of the night itself was blunt: that inside the house, an advance was made and refused, and that Zion died for refusing it. That was the state's account of the motive. With no body, there was no way to confirm it. The rest, though, was harder to wave off. The phone's data placed Brazier at the Highland Park dumpster lot, there for about 7 minutes, then home. An FBI analyst would later walk a jury through every one of those movements. That same night, he'd given his girlfriend, Katrina Smith, a ride, and she'd seen a deep, bloody scratch on him. He told her the cat did it. She said the cat had never scratched anyone like that. Detectives had asked him about a scratch too. He'd given them the same answer. A police dog, brought to his car, alerted to the scent of human remains in the trunk. The jail calls kept adding to it. He asked Smith to look up the pros and cons of recanting a statement. He asked her whether the landfill search had turned up anything. Smith would become one of the most important voices against him and one of the most reluctant. By the time of trial, she would say she felt forced to take the stand. The defense would seize on it, pointing out that a detective had reported her to Child Protective Services after overhearing a recorded jail call. The state had its witness. It did not have her willingly. What finally pushed the case over the line, the lead detective would testify, was a witness who came forward. In June 2023, still no body, still no cause of death. Wayne County charged Jalen Brazier with second-degree murder and tampering with evidence. That August, after a 2-day hearing, a judge found there was enough to send him to trial. The district judge who heard that evidence called him a sick person and asked aloud why he never called for help for someone he was supposed to love. The question now belonged to a jury. The trial opened in May 2024, more than 2 years after Zion's last text. A jury was seated, and the state laid out a homicide with no homicide scene, no remains, and no cause of death. It called 32 witnesses across 9 days. Her mother, her boyfriend, his girlfriend, his brother, who admitted Brazier first denied even knowing Zion, then later said she'd been at the house. Detectives, the FBI phone analyst, the sergeant who had led the dig. The defense called no one. Brazier was sworn in outside the jury's presence, said he understood his right not to testify, and chose to use it. He kept his silence. His lawyer pressed the gap that had always defined the case. No body, no proven cause of death, no one who ever saw a killing. He attacked the work behind it, that police never tested for DNA, never collected the marijuana, wrote down Brazier's own statement wrong. He floated other ways Zion might have died: a seizure, asthma, marijuana laced with something. But a forensic pathologist had already reviewed Zion's medical records and testified there was nothing in them to explain a sudden death like the one Brazier described. So the state built its case out of the defendant himself. His shifting stories, played back to the room, his jail calls, his searches, read into the record one by one. The prosecutor told the jury that only 2 people knew what happened in that house, and one of them was gone. Then he put it plainly. He got rid of her body because he murdered her. The jury went out around midday. They were back in about 30 minutes. A case with no body, one that had taken more than 2 years to charge and a near $1 million dig through a landfill to build, was decided in less time than it takes to empty a courtroom for lunch. Guilty, second-degree murder, tampering with evidence.
As to count 1, how do you find?
Guilty.
Brazier showed nothing as the verdict was read. Before sentencing, Zion's mother spoke about what was left behind. The hardest part, she said, was waking each day to her daughter's belongings, to a video surfacing on her phone, memories with no one to share them with, no laughing it over together, not anymore. On June 3rd, 2024, the judge passed sentence. 38 to 90 years for the murder, 5 to 10 more for tampering, stacked to run after it, not alongside it. He went beyond the sentencing guidelines and said why. That Brazier still could not take responsibility, and that what made it worse was who Zion had been to him. The terms together reach as high as 100 years. Zion's father stood and spoke to the jurors. He told them they'd spared other families from going through this. Her mother thanked them for listening to a daughter who couldn't speak for herself. Jalen Brazier is in a Michigan prison now. He will be an old man before he can even ask to leave. Zion Foster has never been found. There is a conviction, there is a sentence, there is still no place for her mother to bring flowers.